I get asked a lot about the status of my own record label. And since doing this show, I mean, if you know anything about the origins of this show and of this channel, it's that I had been running my label for about 7 or 8 years, and I was in this dark period. I was kind of stuck, and I was feeling alienated and like I needed a community. And so I started interviewing other record labels, and that's how other record labels started. But anyway, I'm not going to get into that. The ironic thing is that the whole other record labels community and the podcast and the YouTube channel has overtaken my time. And so I don't get a chance to run my record label. But I wanted to revisit my own record label, and I wanted to kind of share some of the things that I've learned and why I've actually had to stop doing my label for a little while as I focus on this show. But I think there's 3 key takeaways that you'll benefit from my own mistakes and my own hindsight. So back in 2010, when I started my own record label, the word of the day, the word of our whole label was community. And what that meant was, even before we had any records released, we were playing shows together. We were doing house shows. Artists were touring together. Artists were playing in each other's bands. And then when we started making records, artists would sing on background vocals or play guitar on each other's records. And then at shows, we would help each other with merch. It was this massive community that lasted a really long time, and it was really vibrant, and it was really cool. Even the A&R process was kind of community-minded. But like all good things, it kind of came to an end totally naturally. It was just people moved away, people got married, people had kids, people went to different schools, or the school semester ended. That community just kind of naturally dissipated, and it's okay. But then the record label kind of took a shift. It took a shift into this second phase I started noticing, where a lot of the novelty of having a record label kind of wore off. And so some of the friends who were involved kind of went off and did their own thing. And it was just kind of me left, who was recording and mixing and working with the artists. And it was no longer about community. It was more of just this creative outlet for myself and for the artists. Now, remember, this is all hindsight, and this has the benefit of hindsight. I didn't really notice this in the moment. I notice it now when I'm looking back. I think our second year after the big community wave had kind of ended is when this reality really sunk in and really cemented. And I discovered this artist on Bandcamp, and it was kind of left of center. He was kind of out there. Not a lot of our audience really understood this record, but I wanted to re-release this record in Canada. And we did it on vinyl, and we shipped it out here, and it was just a really cool thing. It's something that not everybody was on board with, but I was really passionate about this record, and I still am. Another record we did kind of as a surprise, we kind of like secretly recorded it, and all of a sudden announced it like a day before its release, and that was a really cool thing. These were all super personal and weren't necessarily community projects. They were more just creative projects. And because of this, I started taking the projects really seriously, and I started taking them really personally. So when an album would be successful, and we had a lot of cool opportunities come to some of our songs and some of our albums, I considered that a win for me. That was like my own record being rewarded, and I loved that part of it. And on the other side of it, if an album was rejected, or we pitched it to press and they kind of ignored it, or if the public ignored it, I took that really personally, and that really hurt my feelings. Looking back, I don't think this was totally a bad thing, but I realize now that the label at some point shifted from being this community to being about Scott's fulfillment. And it was about my creative artistry and how I would kind of work through the artists, or even live vicariously through their art. And perhaps I became a little bit too controlling of the music and the track listing and the artwork and even the live components. And I don't know if it was totally a wrong thing. I mean, it was just over passionate, and I didn't really have a way. And this is kind of leading to why I had to kind of put that record label on hiatus, is I didn't really know how to be super passionate and super involved, but still let the artists do their thing. I mean, it sounds like I was micromanaging. I think maybe I was micromanaging, but I see it as more intimate than that. You know what I mean? Even though these weren't technically my releases, I still felt like they were my releases. But as I had less and less time, like as this time period went on, like 4 or 5 years, I had less and less time to commit to the record label. And then all of a sudden, these passion projects, because there wasn't necessarily a lot of money coming in from these records, they had to be a passion project. They had to give me fulfillment. Now, all of a sudden, I didn't want to work on any record that wasn't an absolute passion project for me, that didn't get me really excited, if it wasn't with an artist that I've been dreaming about working with, it became this Achilles heel for the record label. The record label just couldn't really grow because I was only working with artists I really, really wanted to work with. Okay, here's an analogy to kind of explain what I'm talking about. You know how a movie director, let's say like Tarantino or Scorsese, they kind of dictate the whole tone for the movie, right? They influence the cinematography, they influence the color correction, the music, the whole tone and artistic vision of the movie comes from the director. Now, fans go to see actors and actresses and celebrities in the movie theaters, and that's why we're drawn to those movies. But even those celebrities have to obey the director. The director is telling them what to do. And even though they bring their own creative side of things, really, it's the director's tone. It's the overarching director's vision. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the analogy that I was like viewing my own record label as, is that I was this director and these things had to kind of fall in line with my vision. And if it didn't, then I couldn't really work with that project. I think for better or for worse, I think a little bit more for worse. I don't know if I fully regret it. And I don't know if it was a bad decision. Some of the artists maybe would have said it's a bad decision. Maybe as you're listening to this now, you would think it's a bad decision. For me, it's just how I am as a creative. Maybe it's why I've never been in a band. I just obsess over the whole process. And the idea of compromising on even just a small component of the art is something I'm really not comfortable with. There are people who can be in bands and who can reach a compromise with the artists that they work with. God bless them. I can't do that. I think there's 3 things I want you to take away from this little story and kind of my history of running my own label and shutting my own label down for a little while. And a lot of this has just come to light in the past couple of months. And so you're really benefiting from my hindsight. Number 1 is to pick a word that defines your why. Pick a word that defines your why. Ideally, 1 word. And so originally for my record label, that word was community. And as I mentioned, that makes a ton of sense. But if I had to pick a word now, it might be creativity. However, the more I think about it, maybe that word for me now, as I've described, is fulfillment. I get fulfillment out of working with artists and bringing the songs that are inside of a songwriter and putting them onto record and then sending those out to people. I get fulfillment if I know that I've contributed to a music fan getting goosebumps and enjoying music and attaching themselves to a music release in the same way that I have to many records over the years. I don't know what that word is for you, but I find it really helpful now that I look back and think, okay, phase 1 of my label was community, and phase 2 of my label was creativity, and now it's maybe fulfillment. I'll only work on projects that are really fulfilling to me personally as an artist and as an individual. For you, the public doesn't need to know about this word. It's not something you have to share with other people. Maybe even your artists don't know about it, but this 1 word can really define your why and help you set up parameters. Number 2 is be honest with your artists. As I look back, as I've told this story, I realized that this all would have been okay if I had kind of let the artists know about the deal. This is the deal. Scott likes to be really involved with the artwork, really involved with the music and the song selection. If that doesn't sound like it gels with your artistic vision, then this relationship probably isn't going to work. And it's something that I should have talked about at the very beginning, and it's something that I would recommend for you. If you have a unique way of running your record label, or if you have a unique leadership style, or the way that you like to work with people, if community is really important to you, if there are certain things that are really important to you, these are all fine. You do you. Just bring your artist in on that agreement as early as possible. I'm not talking about like your financial, contractual agreements. I'm talking about some of the more spiritual side of things, if you will. Whatever it is, make sure the artists know what the deal is. By the way, I've worked with artists in this time frame where they really appreciated someone who took care of all the artwork. They appreciated that I became an extra band member, and they were really open to sharing the experience, and they kind of were glad that I was there to do that and that I was passionate about it because they weren't maybe passionate about it. Those projects are really special to me, and I still look back fondly on those times. But that's not for every artist. Number 3 is get good at saying no. Let's go back to when I started my label. I didn't have any kids. I had a job that allowed me to do this and spend all my time. It was all I was thinking about, so I didn't care how much time I was spending running my label. I could say yes to everything. I did say yes to everything. I said yes to every artist and every opportunity and every gig. But as my life changed and things evolved, I had to be a little bit more selective with my time. And unfortunately, I hadn't practiced saying no. And so this is what I want to encourage you to do is to practice saying no, because now I feel like I'm really selective with my time. I don't have a lot of time for a lot of different things. And so I have to use my discernment and be really selective with the projects and events that I work on. And I wish that I had more practice saying no. Today, I'm a lot better at saying no, and it's one of the tools in my toolbox that I'm most proud of. There's this incredible quote. There's a couple of quotes I'll share with you, but there's this really incredible quote. I've probably shared it before. That says, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. Basically, this is like a decision tool for you. It means if you're like hemming and hawing about something, then it's probably a no. You can almost trust your gut that if you can't make a surefire decision right away, then just default to no. Somebody messaged me recently. They sent me a DM with a proposal. And I said, okay, I'll get back to you and think about it. Well, they followed up a couple days later. And when they followed up, I realized I hadn't thought about it once in that time frame. I totally had forgotten about it. And it actually happened like one or two more times. They kept following up. And I realized I literally have not thought about this at all. That should be a sign. I don't think I'm interested. Here's another great quote about saying no. Say no out of strength instead of saying yes out of weakness. This means basically that over time, that you get more and more confident in your own personal discernment as an individual and as a business owner. You get confident in the system that you have in place, the record label model that you've built. If something comes in, if an opportunity comes in and it doesn't fit into this puzzle, even though it's a great idea, it's a cool thing, it's a friend who's proposing it, or it's someone you respect, if it doesn't fit into this shape that you've created, then you just have to say no. You have a mission statement, you have a filter in which you take new opportunities and put them through. Be confident in your decisions. Here's one from Warren Buffett. The difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything. You know what this means? This means that your default response is no. In fact, here's what this means to me. You know those emails that come in, they're like obviously a pitch, like somebody has an idea, they want you to come on board, maybe it's an artist, who knows what it is. When I'm opening those emails, my default response is this is going to be a no. And then like 1 out of maybe 25 or 1 out of 40 times, I'm like, oh yeah, actually that sounds really interesting. That really fits into what I'm trying to do right now. Let's do it. But stick to your plan. Don't chase after vanity opportunities or popularity or things that you think that this doesn't fit into my plan, but maybe it's a great way to make money or to get popular. Ignore those things. Your default response should be no. Okay, so your takeaways are this. Pick a singular word that defines your why and the theme of your label. For me, it was community, and then it became fulfillment. Be transparent and honest with your artists. Whatever your deal is, that's okay. Just make sure the artist is made aware of that ahead of time. And finally, get really good at saying no. I hope you found this helpful. You can go to otherrecordlabels.com where I have all of my resources and for record labels, and not just like, templates and sample recording contracts and that kind of stuff, but a lot of articles that are in this realm that are a little bit more philosophical and that will help on the more, philosophical side of running a business. So I hope you found this helpful. Let me know your thoughts. If there are, something that resonated with you in this episode, if you have a position on saying no, or if you have a word that defines your why, let me know in the comments. I'd really like to know. Thanks so much.